Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to another Whiteboard Wednesday. Took a little break before, but now we are back and better than ever. So today I want to talk about something slightly different, bit of chatting there, but also some other channels in the mix for you guys. Wanting to kind of put in our 2 cents into this ongoing discussion about omni-channel, the rise of super agents. Hope you like my drawing. Took me all of about 30 seconds, so yeah. It's not great, but we'll live with it. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. As the customer contact world is changing, as there's more channels being introduced, as there's more ways in which customers want to access us as organisations on the channel they choose, in the way they choose to do it, at a time they want to do it, it poses the question and also the challenge as to how do organisations recruit, train and manage teams that can service interactions across those different ecosystems and those different channels. Can one agent do it all? Is there such a thing as a super agent? Should you go down a more specialised kind of team-based route? I just want to kind of start a bit of a conversation around that by giving you guys our 2 cents on the conversation as it stands. So what I want to do is run through each of the channels and kind of outline some of the, I guess, key pieces that someone would need to be excellent at that particular channel, and maybe start to highlight some differences here. So first and foremost is phone. Obviously we've got to have a good tone of voice. We've got to be speaking to someone that sounds like they want to be speaking to us and not like they want to jump out of a window at some point in the near future. Part of that is obviously their speed, pitch and intonation. So tone of voice is really important. Obviously 80% of communication is non-verbal. Tone of voice gives us a lot still as human beings. We can understand whether someone's happy, sad, and a whole plethora of other emotions just by how they're speaking. So that's a really important thing. The other areas for a phone-based operative is how quickly can they process conversations, how quickly can they work through calls. Things like average handle time become really important, and calls per hour might be core metrics. Their training and the kind of things they're going to be focusing on, typically in terms of telephone training, is things like how do we open a call, how do we put someone on hold correctly, how do we transfer a call. Quick side note on that, I definitely think the art of transferring calls well has been lost somewhere along the way. Last time I was actually transferred to someone who then bothered to tell the person the last 5 minutes of conversation I just had with them. I can't really remember. So if you're out there doing transferring, please, before you transfer, just tell the other guy what I've just told you, because otherwise it's just painful. And then also the closing and the end of that particular call conversation. Obviously within this it's going to be backed up by knowledge, probably backed up by some scripts as well in certain instances, but a lot of these conversations are going to start with either gathering key customer information like account number, reference number or something like that, or even just saying how can I help you, and letting the customer open up that ballpark and the agent is trained to then know which route to take based on that. If we then look at chat, which is also synchronous, should have mentioned that if I haven't, both these things are synchronous, they happen in real time, two-way interaction. If we look at chat, suddenly spelling and grammar becomes critical, right? So first we've got one initial highlight difference here. A lot of the screening stuff in typical recruitment for the CS agents that I've seen or been exposed to in the industry is going to be things like CV, application, maybe some base skill checks, maybe phone interview, face-to-face interview, maybe some assessment day, typically not. So oftentimes spelling and grammar is assumed based on things like their application or based on their CV. The difference with chat is it's all very well and good to spell things correctly and have excellent grammar when you've got all the time in the world to review that piece of information or document. With chat, you don't have that luxury. So we have to be really hard on people who have excellent spelling and grammar all the time, because they're going to have to be churning out words and characters at a very fast pace with time pressure on them. Doesn't happen as much in tone of voice. You might have call notes, you might have a follow-on email, which we'll come to, but it's not as time sensitive, and therefore the skill needs to be higher when you're putting someone on chat. Tone of voice in written. So with these 3 communication channels, we suddenly have a slightly different requirement, which isn't, are you a bubbly, lovely, friendly person? Do you make me want to smile? And so on and so forth. When I talk to you, it's can you get your personality, can you get your enthusiasm across using the written word? Are you able to express yourself as expressively, for want of a better word? Obviously I'm failing my own test here, but can we do that in a written communication fashion, because that is a very different skill set. So are we testing people for that? Are we training for that? Typing speed, again, most assessments for most channels won't focus on this. They'll focus on the skill sets needed to be a great customer service person. Often, those skill sets are base layer skill sets. I'm not saying they're wrong, we'll come back to them at the end, but I'm saying if we're not screening for these particular things, or for these particular things, or these particular things which we'll run through, and we're expecting someone who can do this to then just go and do all these three, potentially there's going to be a bit of a gap there. Other things is going to be the structure. Channels needs a structure like the phone, but it shouldn't be the same. It's a different channel. There needs a different approach, a different set of questions, a different potential path. It's online, it's on-site, it should be using resources there that's available, it should be guiding customers on a particular journey. With the phone, it's going to be a very different kind of structure. So are we writing different structures for chat, for email, for social, and for phone, or are we just shoehorning the same general structure across the board and hoping for the best? Other things, response times. Average handle is obviously the overall call duration. Email might be overall response or time to respond to the first email. Social might be response to each individual tweet. In the same way, chat. Key success indicator has to be your average response time, drives up satisfaction, the higher this is. So are they used to, moving on from that, are they able to type fast? Again, this is something that probably won't necessarily have been screened for. So if we're putting edges from a phone interaction to a chat interaction, or from an email interaction to a chat interaction, are they able to type at 65, 70, 80 words per minute so that we can actually achieve response time metrics, or are we just hoping that they can and letting them do it? And then things like actually leading the conversation. So one of the big differences we always see here is when you take a great phone agent and put them on chat, they often become like an interactive FAQ tool. Why? Because there's no one breathing down the other end of the phone. There's nothing forcing someone to carry on that conversation. So from a customer perspective, they'll often ask a question, get an answer, ask a question, get an answer, ask a question, get an answer, and leave. But with a phone, that conversation would carry on more organically because people would fill those silences, fill those gaps, follow on with questions and so forth. So quite different already we're seeing just between these two channels. Now let's click over to email. Email is obviously asynchronous. Send something, wait for a response. I've actually seen stuff recently in my own consumer experience where the response time is 3 days. And that was a massive car rental company. So that's pretty slow. But nonetheless, what's important for email? Well, obviously we've got the spelling and grammar again. Difference here being it's not as time sensitive, so potentially someone who's slightly less able to spell or use grammar correctly might be okay in an email setting, or more okay than a chat setting, so like time pressure. Tone of voice in written, we talked about this a lot in chat, but again, someone who's lovely, bubbly, and friendly over here on a voice base, can they translate that to a written format, yes or no? With email, you're going to want to have more supporting documentations, guides. There might be on-site help pages, there might be screenshots, there might be walkthroughs, there might be videos. But you're going to want to try and package out that email with the information that customer needs to execute that troubleshooting journey largely on their own from those steps, because, moving on to the last point, you don't really want to have many email correspondences doing incremental steps. That's really frustrating, especially when you're looking at long response times, 24 hours plus is normal SLAs in a lot of businesses still today. And so if you send this really long email and the first email back is like, can I have your browser information, for example, before they've sent you any other troubleshooting steps, and there's another 24 hours to get troubleshooting steps, you get the idea. So you want to try and package these emails out, in my opinion, with as much information as possible. If you're using this browser, for example, here's the troubleshooting steps. If you're using that browser, here's the troubleshooting steps, so that we're not having this back and forth interaction being created by just asking questions where we could just be providing more answers and letting the customer self-select. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, whatever you want to call it, is again an asynchronous channel. Doesn't necessarily happen in real time. People call this real time. Often it's not real time. It's an hour, half an hour, 10 minutes, depending on what your SLAs are, 2 hours, 24 hours, etc. Not at all in some instances. Again, spelling grammar, you're seeing a theme here. All of these are digital written communications, so there's going to be a theme. Spelling grammar becomes more important. Tone of voice in written becomes more important. Things like in social, do we know how to use hashtags correctly? Do we understand company policy on using humor, using GIFs, using other things like that? Do we have a policy in terms of brand as to how far we can take that humor? You see a lot of examples in the media about amazing customer service that's being highlighted because the brands are being human. And that feeling of how you have it on social media can be played with. Again, we're seeing some differences here. If I pick up the phone and go and speak to, for example, O2, and they're like, what up, bruv? what's going on with your mobile, yeah? SOS, hashtag sorry not sorry, for example, I probably wouldn't be too happy with that because it's horses for courses. However, in this channel, if I send them a cheeky message, like, oh, what's going on with this, mate? Then they might be well placed to actually come back to me with something whimsical and comical and funny because it suits the channel. And I think this is starting to hopefully paint a bit of a picture that you can't just necessarily expect one person to nail all these channels by definition of them being a base level positive customer service person. We'll keep pushing on them, come back to that final point. Other things, for example, Twitter, do they know how to respond to an issue in 140 characters, or is it more that you guys are going to let them run with on Facebook? If it is 140, how are you going to execute that process? Are you going to try and slide into their DMs, as it were, or are you going to try and solve the issue particularly publicly? And also things like monitoring. Do they understand how to monitor non-tagged, non-atted tweets, social interactions and so forth, and actually pick them up and respond to them proactively? And if so, how are they going to handle that conversation? So, what are we saying here? Is it possible for one agent to be good at all these things? Yes, of course it is possible for one agent to be good at all these things. But what I think is often the case is we are using recruitment, selection and training processes that are focused on the building blocks of great customer service. So people who maybe are technically savvy as a starting point, people who are warm and engaging and enthusiastic and friendly, which is obviously really important. And then we're interviewing them using tools and techniques that, largely speaking, do not assess 1, 2 and some of 3. They're really good for assessing this because what we're assessing essentially is, can they write, period, can they talk on the phone, because they'll normally have had a phone interview, and what do they present like face to face, and then we get a feel for their character, we get a feel for their personality, and that's much easier to get through on the phone than it is typically on a written communication. So we're doing a lot of screening that fills kind of this quadrant here. And then what we're assuming typically is, okay, well, they're really good at this, and all this other stuff is the same stuff, it's just on a slightly different format. It's just a bit of a different channel, you know. Whatever you do on the phone, go and do it on chat. And really, I think we're failing some agents and also some customers because we as businesses aren't really thinking through, are we assessing people within our organisation for the kinds of skills that will be needed, the different skills, the nuanced skills that will be needed for these different channels? Are we actually taking time to understand how do we screen in our base, if we're recruiting internally, in our existing team, if we want to start doing chat, how do we take a bunch of our phone people and actually screen them for key qualities and characteristics that would make them optimal for delivering an excellent experience on chat? Rather than kind of a hands up guys who wants to have a stab at live chat type approach, or rather than a hands up guys we need to do some social media who wants to jump on Twitter approach, I think the idea of taking someone who's good at one thing and expecting them by default to be good at something else, I've never seen that anywhere else in any other organisation in terms of function. You wouldn't take someone who's great at sales and expect them to start looking after your website. Why is it that we expect a customer service representative to be a do-it-all dolly, to be able to span themselves across any single channel? New one comes on board, right, shove that in the team. Let's not think about our approach for it. Let's not think about their skill sets required for it. Let's not think about the structure and the approach and the differences that we want to have for that channel to make it feel different, to make it fit the context of that channel. Let's just shove Dorothy or Ben or Jamal or whoever the hell it is, and let's just make as many channels as we can and see what happens. Now, again, not saying this isn't possible, but I would say that if you are going to pursue a multi-omni super agent type approach, you have to come up with some sort of structure for assessing either new recruits or existing recruits for aptitude in channel based on channel specific requirements. And you as an organisation then need to understand channel specific deployment tactics, what's the different strategy, structure and approach for each of those channels. And then you need to provide supporting training, information and personal development for these kinds of channels if you want to get a better than average result, or if you want to get a good result, or even if you want to get a great result, dare I say it. So that's kind of, I guess, my key thoughts. Last point from me just to add to the debate. Please, if you think that giving multi-channel service is a good idea, I agree, really nice idea, but people can be on the phone and at the same time doing a live chat, doing a social media post or doing an email, try this little litmus test. try and have a conversation with someone about a certain topic, and at the same time, try and type out a conversation with someone about a completely different topic. And what you'll sort of have happen is your brain will start making this whirring noise, and then maybe some steam will come out of your ears, and if you're lucky, your head won't explode. But we're not designed to do it. It's really, really difficult. If you think patting your head, rubbing your tummy is a challenge, then being on the phone and also conducting a live chat, an email, or a social media post at the same time, humans aren't great at multitasking. Anyway, especially when it's requiring the same function of the brain, which is the conversational part of the brain, to then do two different. Anyway, enough. Please do stay clear of it. Doesn't mean people that do the phone can't do chat and social and email, but they need to have a lot of time. What we typically see and what we're kind of, I guess, ambassadors for is that these three, which are all written digital communication styles, often share a lot of the same base level skills, generally speaking, share a lot of the base level techniques and training and so on, required to allow someone, when properly assessed and trained for each of the three, to work across those three depending on volumes, levels of demand and so forth. But phone is the square peg in a round hole type situation. We haven't ever seen an effective use case where someone can be on the phone, and especially in a synchronous chat-based scenario, phone and maybe email. There's some complementary stuff there in the sense of when the phone lines are quiet, I can do emails, maybe phone line social media, because again it's asynchronous, but you need to watch out for your SLAs. But in terms of combining two synchronous real-time channels together and getting one person to do that, haven't seen it work yet. Happy for you to share some examples if you are smashing it. If you do have super agents, if you have deployed multi-channel, if you've done it by having individuals who are trained and working across all 4 channels, love to hear about it. If you've done it by having individual specialist teams, I know a lot of teams have built like a social media team, for example, that just do social media, read response, etc. I think that's a really cool strategy. Love to hear about that. Just really hoping to spark some debate with this, guys. They're kind of my 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 cents. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I think it's going to be a really ongoing problem for the industry, for the market. I think it's going to be something that people need to start thinking about very seriously and need to start taking seriously in terms of the level of complexity this is starting to add to customer contact and to customer contact organisations. So hopefully it's given us some kicking off points, some kindling on the fire, on the whatever, and we can have a conversation from here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Appreciate it. I'm Jonny. I'll see you soon.